So it's been about 6 months since I've had the Fuji X100 Mark VI, and I was always going to do a follow-up 6-month review of this camera. But the timing of me making this video actually coincides with the day that I decided to sell it. Now, the reasons why I decided to sell the camera is purely financial. And it's just one of those things where even after I had sold it, I came back and I spoke to my partner and I told her that I actually already regret selling it. Because I still do want the camera, it's just financially speaking and logically speaking, it doesn't make sense for me to hold it. Fortunately and unfortunately, I've been super busy with work. So I've been constantly just working all the time. That being said, I hardly see my friends and family. So therefore, having an everyday camera for those personal social occasions that are so few and far in between anyway, didn't make much sense. There were a few things that frustrated me about the camera, but that's only because I'm so conditioned to using professional level equipment that I expect it to perform the same, which is so unfair to it because it's so much smaller, so much cheaper than, say, the other stuff that I've been using day to day. So first off, the couple of things that frustrated me about the camera was its autofocus. I'm sure over time, between the Fuji X100 Mark I to the Fuji X100 Mark VI, there's been so much improvement within that. I believe it's still using the same lens throughout the whole X100 series. But the autofocusing performance has been improved over time through various different reasons. But nonetheless, it still doesn't compare to, say, this new Sony autofocusing systems. The Sony A7C II that I'm shooting on at the moment has AI level autofocusing, whatever that means. But even the previous generation of the A7 IV was still performing way far beyond the Fuji X100 Mark VI does. This could just be down to user error if I'm completely honest, but using the Sony cameras, I can just simply touch where I want it to focus, move the camera, the subject can move around and it will just lock on and hold that tracking. Whereas the Fuji never did that for me. I would actually have to select the focus points with the joystick and then fire the shot. Even at that, sometimes when I'm aiming it and I'm selecting the focus points and then I fire the shot, sometimes it's just not quite there. Sometimes it misses between certain shots. I might take a series of 3 shots and it holds focus, it loses focus, holds focus. A friend of mine did actually give me the suggestion that maybe it is because I'm using a black mist filter on it, which is a very fair and valid point. Because since I own the camera, I've only ever used it with the circular polarizer quarter black diffusion filter on there. But nonetheless, that is how I wanted to use the camera, is with that filter, and it just wasn't performing. I use a black diffusion filter here on my Sony cameras and it seems to perform fine. However, on the Fuji, the performance just wasn't quite where I was used to. If I was just to quickly touch on the film simulation part first, and that is because the film simulations are essentially a preset, which you can dump on in Lightroom in post. You can batch process them all with the same preset and there you go. And what I find typically speaking when I'm editing in Lightroom across anything that I do, every image is slightly different to the next. So therefore you need to fine tune just a tiny bit here and there. One preset may suit one scene but won't suit another. So the film simulations within the camera, as nice as they are, they don't always suit every shooting situation that you come across. Sometimes I found that they really crush the shadows and then I'd have to change the film simulation to another one or change the processing in the camera, which is a bit more of a slow process than if I was to sort of change it in Lightroom. So I get that it's totally a personal thing on my part, but I did find at times that I did want to tweak the images anyway, regardless of the fact that I've got the film simulations on there. It's also down to a personal workflow process because what I typically do is I import all my photos into Lightroom, I cull the images and then I delete the non-keepers. It's way faster for me to do it in that way than, say, deleting on the back of the camera. I also found that the low light performance wasn't as good as the Sony full frames, which is granted between full frame and crop. And again, it may also be impacted due to the circular polarizer black diffusion filter that I had on the camera. But I did feel that on top of losing it from the sensor size difference, plus the filter size difference, I'm losing a lot of low light performance. So sometimes when I'm looking at the images, I missed having the full frame raw lens type of look. And now between the full frame and the crop centered look difference in terms of full frame shallow depth of field, that was a very big thing for me. The Fuji X100 series uses a 23mm f2 lens. And when you kind of do a conversion to full frame equivalency, it's about a 35mm f4 or f3.5 from what I see. So I did think to myself that I could actually get away with, say, using the 35mm f2.8 Sony Zeiss lens, which is a small pancake-ish lens, slapping it on one of my professional bodies or my A7C II, and that would actually serve me better than the Fuji X100 Mark VI. So overall, I did actually really enjoy using the Fuji X100 Mark VI. There were just a few things that frustrated me with the camera, and ultimately, from a financial perspective, it doesn't make sense holding on to it, given the fact there's many other things that I would want to buy that would actually serve me better within my professional realm. Now, when I first bought this camera, I actually bought a bunch of accessories for it. I used the small rig thumb grip, which it did help and it didn't help almost. I don't feel it helped as much as everyone makes out in the reviews that it does. I could have done without it. I would have preferred to have a bit more grip towards the front rather than having a thumb grip at the back. So that's something to consider as well, depending on the size and shape of your hands. I also purchased a screw-on shutter button. I just like the look of that one, if I'm completely honest. I think the red accent added a nice little touch to it. Not necessary, but it was something that I purchased. I also purchased additional spare batteries, which the funny thing is I never needed, never used. I never charged the battery through the charger, and I never used the K&F batteries through that. I just used the Fuji battery and I charged in camera, and I never found a time where I ran out of battery. Whether that just goes to show that the battery performance is good or that I just didn't put it through its paces, which is more likely the latter if I'm completely honest. But nonetheless, I did actually purchase spare batteries just in case based off all the other reviews and recommendations, but I didn't find I needed it. One of the best accessories that I did purchase for the camera though, and that was the filter adapter. I say it's the best purchase because it's a mandatory purchase if you want to use filters. I still do feel that if you're going to be using the film simulations to get that film type of look, adding black diffusion to the front of the lens actually really helps also. Overall, the camera is actually a really solid camera. It's just really depending on what you're used to and what you're currently shooting with. In my personal opinion, if you do have professional level equipment, I'm not entirely sure that you'll be completely satisfied with using this camera. But I would imagine if you're someone doing street photography, or if you're actually just trying to capture your friends and family, but you have a bit more of an active social life than I do, this camera will be well suited to you. But nonetheless, for me, the camera is now sold. I'm going to take that fund and I'm going to put it towards a Sony A9 III. And I hope that I don't regret getting the A9 III and maybe holding out for the A7 V, but only time will tell. But otherwise, that's it from me. Cheers for watching.